Ready? Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carrie Coffin, and thanks for joining today's Broker Session Zoom. We appreciate your taking the time to be here, and more importantly, for the ongoing effort you put into growing as professionals and supporting your agents. We know how important it is for you to stay informed on the latest issues impacting our industry, and our goal is to bring you timely and accurate information to help you lead with confidence. We're glad you're here, and we're looking forward to a valuable session together. Norman, did you want to say anything too, or?
I'll just say thanks for all of you taking your time out of your busy schedules to be with us. We want to continue to be able to provide our managing brokers, broker owners, and those that hold a broker's license valuable resources and tools from Louisiana Realtors. And I think we've got a couple of three speakers today that'll give you some great updates. And then at the end, I want to showcase a great event and might ask a couple of the attendees that are on this Zoom today to talk about it. And that's our Broker Summit coming up in August. So without further ado, Carrie, why don't you introduce our first speaker, who's a great leader in the legislature.
And of course, he's talking about the one and only Gabe Firment. Gabe is our state representative, and he's going to give us an insurance legislation review. Gabe was elected District 22 state representative in 2019 and is currently serving as the chairman of the House Insurance Committee. During his time in the state legislature, Gabe has advocated for insurance reform, fiscal responsibility, and traditional conservative values. He earned a Bachelor of Science in Public Administration from Louisiana College in 1994 and later obtained an MBA from Louisiana Tech University. Gabe has worked in the construction and insurance industry for over 25 years and is the owner of Horizon Claims Service, an independent claims adjustment and consulting firm. Firment resides in Grant Parish with his wife, Erica, who is the principal at Pollock Elementary School. They have 3 children and 3 extremely spoiled grandchildren. Gabe is a deacon and a Sunday school teacher at First Baptist Church of Pollock and is active in several civic and religious organizations in Central Louisiana. So please welcome Mr. Gabe Firment.
Hey, Carrie, thank you for that introduction. It's good to be with y'all, and I actually just visited with a Grant Parish realtor, Mr. Winston Roberts, who I know some of our son-in-law realtors know. Winston's in the hospital, but he was so excited when I told him I'd be coming on with y'all. So thank y'all for having me. And look, there's plenty to talk about when it comes to insurance, and so look, I can start maybe with some of the fortified roof and property bills. Of course, tort reform got most of the attention, and like all in all, I think when the dust settles, we're going to look back and say this was a very successful session when it comes to insurance reform. We had some really big wins and some pretty big disappointments as well, but really, I think, especially with tort reform, really historic, some of the reform legislation that we were able to get through, and the governor has signed most of those bills already. But I know realtors are focused primarily, I guess, on property and on some of the fortified roof bills. So look, if you let me know where you want me to start, but I'd be happy to start with some of that if that works for y'all.
Gabe, Representative Firment, why don't you start with all the property issues that you dealt with that went through, and then hit some of the auto, because I know auto affects not only our realtors but their clients as well too, and what in an effort to maybe lower these rates over the next couple of years.
Right. Yeah. And look, from my perspective, if we're going to have a viable property insurance market in Louisiana, especially in South Louisiana, we've got to build more resilient structures. We've got to create an environment where insurance companies can adequately assess risk, and the best way to do that is by building stronger structures, and that starts with the roof. And so, look, I've been a big proponent of the fortified building program, the fortified roof program, and some of y'all may have heard this. There were some criticisms of the legislature that we focus so much on auto reform that we didn't do anything with property, but that's just not the case. And so when it comes to the fortified roof program, we allocated another $15 or $20 million to the fortified roof program, which has been very, very successful. I think we're up to well over 3,000 fortified roofs through the grant program alone in the first couple of years. And I know y'all got some of these bills on your list of legislative instruments to review, but Representative Stephanie Brault had a bill that simply creates a roof registry. You know, it doesn't matter how many fortified roofs you've got out there if we don't know about it. And so I think creating this roof registry is really a good first step in making that sort of information available to insurers so we can know how many fortified roofs we've got, how many new roofs we've got that have been installed to our newer building codes. So I think that's going to be a good piece of legislation going forward. We've got several bills that Senator Talbot had a bill, Senate Bill 28, that and I don't think the governor signed it yet, but Senate Bill 28 creates a state income tax credit up to $10,000 per homeowner. That would be a credit in exchange for putting on a fortified roof against your state income tax liability. And so anything we can do to incentivize homeowners to invest in fortified roofs outside of the grant program, because I can tell you the legislature does not have the appetite or the means to pay for every roof in South Louisiana to be fortified. And so we've got to incentivize people to make that investment on their own. I think this tax credit is a real good way to do that. It carries forward for about 3 years, I think. So if you don't have a tax liability of $10,000 in 1 year, you can roll that over for 3 years. So that's a really important bill. Senator McMath had a bill that provides a tax exemption for the fortified grant program. Look, some folks that are getting these fortified grants can't afford to pay income tax on that grant money. So that's another good bill that'll help with the fortified program. We've got House Bill 329 and House Bill 441 by Representatives Hebert and Henry that are just really innovative ways to fund the fortified roof program outside of taking money from the state general fund. So those are the big fortified bills. Representative Wilder had a bill that increases the tax deduction not only on fortified roofs but also on bringing your roof up to the current building code, moves that from 5,000 to 10,000. So I'm very encouraged by what we're doing with the fortified roof program. We gotta keep it up. I did have a bill that would have required 5% of sales tax in coastal parishes following a catastrophic storm, for that money to be funneled back to the fortified home program. It didn't get out of the appropriations committee, but that was a pretty creative way of funding the fortified program. So look, I don't think I have to tell y'all that there's great value in fortifying roofs and keeping rain outside of the interior of the building after a storm. And I've seen estimates that having a fortified roof can increase the value of your home by 5 to 7%. And look, that's just the basic fortified level of certification. If you go fortified silver or fortified gold, I'm sure there's even greater value in that. So that kind of wraps up the fortified roof legislation that we passed. But hopefully y'all are in agreement that especially our South Louisiana Realtors, that we've got to continue to invest in this program.
And Representative Firment, I know you're also seeing, as we're seeing just from the commissioner's office, that with these 4 to 5 roofs in place, it is actually giving a immediate relief off of the premiums that you're seeing directly is what we're hearing.
Oh, that's right. Look, that's the only way we can guarantee someone lower rates on their homeowner's policy is if you've got a fortified roof. And we passed legislation a couple of years ago to require insurance companies to offer an actuarially justified premium discount. The Louisiana Legislative Auditor did a report earlier in the year, and that discount is averaging about 20 to 22% across the board. So that is a significant savings. We also know that when you reach a certain level of saturation, when you've got, let's say 20% of your roofs in Lafourche Parish or Cameron Parish or St. Martin, there's a certain level of saturation when you fortify a certain number of roofs that entire zip code or that entire parish becomes much more attractive to insurance companies. And that's what we want to see is companies interested in investing in Louisiana. I will make another comment on fortified is I assisted Representative Devillier with House Resolution 341, which requests the Department of Insurance to really conduct a very thorough, in-depth study of where we're at with fortified roofs, with the wind mitigation survey, with building codes, and this is something I'm going to really be working on between now and next session, is just to make sure that everyone is pulling in the right direction and that we've got the right data to make good decisions, and to make sure that homeowners and commercial property owners understand how valuable it is to invest in fortified. And we need to encourage the Department of Insurance to make sure that that information is available to everyone out there that's interested in it.
Any
So that-
questions on fortified? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, but look, again, for realtors, especially in South Louisiana, so important to be fortifying these roofs. Let's see, I'll touch on a couple of other property insurance bills. And look, it was a mix of consumer-oriented, consumer-friendly legislation and legislation that is attractive to the insurance companies. Now, one bill that I want to mention, and I noticed it's on your list of bills that y'all have taken a look at, and I may be an outlier here because House Bill 356 by Representative Brode was very popular. I guess I was probably the most vocal critic of the legislation. Despite my objections, it sailed through pretty easily. And so this piece of legislation is called the Stated Value Homeowners Policy Act. And I completely agree with the sentiment, and I understand why the bill was so important to Representative Brode and to South Louisiana, because insurance has just gotten so expensive. They're desperate for any solution, and this bill, well, it changed as it went through the process, but it would have required every insurance company in the state to offer a stated value policy where you could essentially walk into your agent and say, I want to insure my house for X number of dollars, no matter what the cost to rebuild the house is. You could essentially just name your price, and on paper that sounds good, but there's a few problems with it. For one, most federally backed mortgages, in fact, as far as I know, all federally backed mortgages require a replacement cost policy. You've got to insure the home for what it would cost to rebuild it. And with inflation that we've seen the past few years, we've got some really high replacement values. And of course, look, that's been reflected in the price of homes as well. But uh, the mandate was removed. So when the bill left the Senate, it was no longer a shall, it was a may. So the bill as it stands now um, encourages insurance companies to offer this stated value policy. There's still some really bad problems with it. For one, it's not going to translate into really significant savings because if you think about it, most of your losses are not total losses where the home is completely destroyed by a hurricane. You've got a tree on the roof or the shingles blown off, and you've got a $25,000 claim on a $400,000 house. And so the 95% of losses or more are not total losses. And so it's not going to translate into significant savings. There's some technical issues with the bill that should have been worked out and they weren't. So y'all will probably be getting questions about that bill, House Bill 356. Other property bills, I'll mention a couple that were not on your list. They're important to me because they were my bills, but they were property oriented. House Bill 437. So when I went with Commissioner Temple to London last fall to visit with Lloyd's and some of the big reinsurance companies, they mentioned that probably the biggest issue for them was bringing clarity to how claims are handled on the property side. And we made big headway with that with Senator Talbot's bill last year that more or less says the clock, the timeline for payment starts with written proof of loss, but there was no clarity as to what a written proof of loss is. I mean, written proof of loss could be a number, written on a Post-it note. And so one provision of House Bill 437 is it establishes a proof of loss form that insurance companies can require to more or less initiate payment of the claim, which is very consumer friendly because it sets clear expectations for the homeowner. It's on the governor's desk. I worked with the trial lawyers to get it in a format where they could take it. We'll see whether or not he signs it, but very, very important for property insurance. It was one of the commissioner's priorities. Another very important bill, House Bill 561, died in the Senate. And this is something that if you're in coastal areas of Louisiana, could have a huge impact on the market in a negative way. The fact that we did not pass this legislation, especially if you're in the commercial real estate business. And so surplus lines is insurance, that non-standard carriers may not offer. And so when I think about surplus lines coverage, I think about strip shopping centers and gas stations and warehouses and things that are sort of non-typical from a risk standpoint. And we need a healthy surplus lines market. This bill would have helped with that. And it's kind of a complex set of circumstances, but the state Supreme Court made a decision late last year that really would prevent surplus lines carriers from negotiating private contracts with commercial policyholders. And this was an argument between surplus lines carriers and trial lawyers. The trial lawyers I think were scared that this legislation could have impacted some of their pending lawsuits from Hurricane Laura and Hurricane Ida. Despite all that, House Bill 561 died in the Senate. So we've got the real potential that some surplus lines carriers may leave the state or stop writing business. And so I'd like some feedback from y'all if you begin to see that. So we need a healthy, viable surplus lines market. So just something to keep an eye on. I think that's the biggies when it comes to property. And so that, kind of the fun stuff was the tort reform or the auto insurance reform. And I'd say this is where we had some of the biggest wins and some of the biggest losses too. And so really there's three major, very important pieces of legislation that I'm really excited about. House Bill 431 by Representative Chenevert moves Louisiana from a pure comparative fault system to a modified comparative fault. And so I guess the simplest way to explain it is right now, or prior to this law going into effect, you could be 90% at fault in an auto accident and still collect a sizable personal injury award. And that's just not fair. And so by moving to a modified comparative fault system, which puts us in line with about 40 other states, if you're more than 51% at fault in an accident, you're not entitled to collect in a personal injury lawsuit. And so look, that's a big deal. And you can tell it's a big deal because of how fervently the opposition tried to kill this bill. And so I'm real excited about that bill. House Bill 434 by Representative DeWitt. No deals with no pay, no play. Of course, it's mandatory that you buy auto insurance in Louisiana. Right now, if you're uninsured and you're in an auto accident, and it's not your fault, you're not entitled to collect on the first 15,000 of bodily injury, first 25,000 of property damage. Representative DeWitt's bill moves that up to 100,000 for bodily injury, 100,000 for property damage. And I think this is going to be really significant in cutting down on frivolous lawsuits by uninsured drivers. So really good piece of legislation. House Bill 450 by Representative Mellerin is a bill that we've been back and forth on the past 3 or 4 years, and it repeals something called the Housley presumption. And again, for me, it just comes down to basic fairness. Prior to this bill, insurance companies, defendants would go into a case with a presumption that an injury was the result of the auto accident. It would be on the defendant to prove otherwise. So really, this bill just says, hey, look, we're starting on a level playing field. The plaintiff has to actually prove that an accident occurred in the automobile accident. So those are the three big ones. I passed a bill, House Bill 436, that essentially says if you're an illegal alien here in our country illegally, you're not entitled to file suit for damages like pain and suffering, mental anxiety caused by a car accident. Look, not that big of a deal, but we've probably got 100,000 illegal aliens in the state right now. I don't think they've got a constitutional right to sue for mental anxiety. And so I think it could probably cut down on as many as 1,500 or 2,000 frivolous claims in a year. So excited about that. Of course, y'all may have heard House Bill 148 was probably the most controversial and contentious bill of the session. It kind of turned into, or at least the perception was, this was the governor against the insurance commissioner. I've got concerns with House Bill 148. It gives the commissioner of insurance really, really extreme authority to reject insurance company requests for rate increases, really, for arbitrary reasons. Now, the Senate amended the bill to say that the Department of Insurance may consider actuarial factors in setting rates, but there's no requirement to consider actuarial rates, actuarial facts when setting rates. And look, I'm all about the free market and competition, and I think to have a healthy insurance market, we need to be able to go into our independent agent's office or State Farm or Allstate and get them to bid on our business. And so and that's happening with property insurance. I hope that y'all are seeing some of that, because almost every time I'm telling my constituents to go shop around for better rates, they're coming back to me and they're saying, look, we got a better deal with a company somewhere. I know we're probably seeing more of that in Central Louisiana and North Louisiana than South Louisiana, but these reforms are working. I'm afraid House Bill 148 has the potential to negate some of that. If nothing else, it just creates some unpredictability and makes us at least slightly attractive for insurers to invest their capital here. But man, we got so much to talk about. I could go on and on, but I guess that's a good point to stop and ask if anybody has any questions.
Either just unmute and ask a question, or raise your hand and we'll try to unmute you as well. Anyone? Do you see anybody, Lori?
I don't see anybody with their hand up, and there's nothing in the chat.
Now, Representative Firment, I'm sure we can also ask you that, and we ask our members all the time, because I've had some calls from some of them about certain circumstances around an insurance issue. In other words, it could be one of their rental properties or their clients. Certainly, if they have an issue or wanting to have some feedback, they can reach out to the Department of Insurance, obviously, but also you'd like to get those stories as well, too. So that
Absolutely.
we can have that, because I know y'all are going to continue in subsequent legislative sessions to do some more reform as we can move forward to make it even better for those companies looking at doing business in the state.
Yeah, like no doubt about it. And please share my cell and my email with everybody. And look, I want to hear from everybody, but I really need to hear from South Louisiana. And if we're seeing any improvement in the homeowners and property insurance, I'm very interested in what kind of feedback you're getting from surplus lines carriers. So please share my information with everybody. And look, I'll finish with this. I know y'all are very visible and very vocal in the Capitol the last couple of years, especially with some of the property bills from last year. And man, it makes such a difference when realtors come to the table and tell their stories and let us know what you're going through. Please call your representatives, call your state senators, because they listen when you call. They really do.
All right. Well, if there's no further questions for Representative Firment, I'm going to let him get back to his business. And we just can't appreciate you enough about all the work you do, not only for your district, but for the state, and particularly on this issue as chairman of insurance, the great work you've done and pushed forward these. It's not easy pushing these measures forward with intense opposition sometimes, but we appreciate you and the leadership you've shown the state and the industry as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, Norman and Carrie. Y'all call me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Hi, Gabe. Thanks. Well, our next speaker, we're going to get a little bit of a Louisiana Real Estate Commission update. It's Mr. Tom Devillier. I hope I said your name right. Tom has been employed at the Louisiana Real Estate Commission since July of 2019. He has served as the Commission's Compliance Director from 2019 to 2020, the General Counsel from 2021 to 2022, and he currently serves as its Executive Counsel and Deputy Director since 2022 to the present. Tom has been licensed attorney since 2009 and has practiced law at the Louisiana Senate, the Louisiana First Circuit Court of Appeals, the Louisiana House of Representatives, and in private civil practice prior to joining the commission. Tom also owns and operates his own small business, a solo law practice here in Baton Rouge. So Tom, we welcome you, and we would love to hear about the Louisiana Real Estate Commission.
Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Kind of a tough act to follow after you have the insurance chairman after this type of legislative session that we have. But in trying to come up with what to discuss with you all, I thought I might give, since this is a broker call, just some recommendations, maybe some, kind of quote unquote risk management best practices recommendations from some of the trends we've been seeing kind of in the compliance enforcement side of things. One of the areas that we continue to see a large percentage of our complaints comes relative to property management. And specific to that, really salespeople operating outside of the purview of their sponsoring broker, sometimes completely without the knowledge of their sponsoring broker, or some kind of arrangement between the sponsoring broker and the salesperson to, just kind of, well, I'm going to keep blinders on and you kind of do what you want to do, salesperson. But so I want to give you an example of how that can kind of go wrong for a brokerage. We just had a pretty extreme example occur within the last 6 months. A 20-year salesperson with no real disciplinary action to speak of prior to the last year, had been with the same sponsoring broker for roughly 10 years. But that sponsoring broker pretty much, turned a blind eye, and then all of the property management accounts were opened in the salesperson's name. The salesperson was handling all of the accounting, everything to do with the property management, essentially, operating her own brokerage without supervision. Well, over the course of November 2024 through January of this year, we received 9 complaints against that salesperson, within consecutive days of each other. But essentially, this person had run up her own personal debts and then proceeded to use her property management business to essentially steal upwards of $150,000 to $200,000 from a list of owners. That there were multiple parishes law enforcement involved in this, so we don't even have a complete list at this point, but it was somewhere between 35 and 70 owners that were affected. And so at the end of the day, East Baton Rouge Parish arrested the salesperson, multiple counts of theft, multiple counts of issuing worthless checks. The commission took emergency order action against her, and then proceeded to a hearing where during that hearing, the commission approved an indefinite suspension of the salesperson pending all of the criminal proceedings' final outcomes, with terms and conditions, including that, even if all of those charges were ultimately dismissed by, the legal authorities, she's going to have to apply for reinstatement. She's going to have to go through fingerprinting, and then she's going to have to appear before our, 11 commissioner brokers to explain why her license should be reinstated. And, of course, we don't think that's going to actually occur. But more relevant to all of you on the phone, the broker in this case, initially attempted to plea that she didn't know what was going on. Ultimately, it came out that she never had control of any of the financial accounts that the salesperson was operating. So there was no supervision by the broker for the entirety of that 10 years. So didn't really affect the broker for the entire time of that 10 years until it all kind of spun bad within a 2-month period of time. But so ultimately, that broker entered into a consent agreement that the commission unanimously approved during its May meeting. She was forced to surrender her broker's license, pay a $5,000 fine. She was allowed to obtain a real estate salesperson license subject to a 90-day suspension, a 4-year probationary period, and for that 4 years, she will be ineligible to apply to become a broker again. So that is essentially the precedent that's been set now, you know, in final order over the course of the last couple of months. That kind of sets a standard for comparison to other cases where, you know, unfortunately, you know, this broker that wasn't directly involved in any of the financial scheme that was ongoing had just completely violated every, you know, duty by law and rule to manage her salesperson, was allowing her salesperson to essentially operate an unlicensed brokerage. And the commission did not look kindly on that. And certainly, like I said, it was a unanimous decision by the commission to impose that harsh discipline. So, you know, all that to say, just from a risk management perspective, please be aware, you know, within our law and rules, property management is in Chapter 26 of our administrative rules. Chapter 27 is contains all the rules that relates to proper accounting, what accounts you have to have, the names that are supposed to be on the accounts. Anytime you're entering into these property management agreements, having written authorization from the property owners, you know, outlining what the powers and duties of either the salesperson or the broker are relative to those properties, the relevant time periods, management fees, and of course, just, you know, what you would expect to be a given that it's being operated through the sponsoring broker. We've also seen cases where salespeople are getting paid through Venmo, things that their broker doesn't even know about. So maybe just something to, you know, reassess what your internal procedures are and how you're monitoring salespeople and maintaining those records. The next topic that we've kind of seen on the rise is fraudulent sellers and vacant land schemes. We've seen multiple of these come across, you know, compliance desk over the last couple of years, and they seem to be increasing. The most common scenario is, you know, there's vacant land with an out-of-state property owner, and salesperson or broker gets approached by somebody they don't know claiming to be the owner of the land. And what we see is there's not a ton of due diligence going into, at least in certain circumstances. I'm not casting a wide net, but in certain circumstances, the real estate agent is not doing enough due diligence in identifying the actual property owner. They maybe look at the parish assessor's office, they see that the names match, and that's kind of where they stop. And so most of the time, we've seen that the complaint comes into us because the property owner finds out, whether it's because they drive past the vacant land and see a sign that's not supposed to be there, or they get a phone call from a neighbor who happens to see a sign, or they get a call from a title company for something, you know, in trying to close the transaction. Most of these we see have derailed before they go to completion. However, within the last 30 to 45 days here in Baton Rouge, we have gotten a complaint regarding a transaction that made it through the entire process. Transaction closes, money's out the door. It's not the real seller. Property owner now has a clouded title. Prospective purchaser of the property is out of money that they can't find. And now there's litigation that's going to be, you know, involving, I'm sure, the licensees involved, the title companies, you know, likely insurance policy holders, et cetera. So, you know, what should you do? You know, the commission has not taken a formal position on that. However, I would just suggest being able to show some additional due diligence beyond, hey, I look at the parish assessor's website, whether it's requesting photo ID, whether it's requesting a Zoom call, asking for copies of bills, just like, you know, they ask for at the DMV, some kind of paperwork or paper trail to show that you did some level of due diligence to identify that seller properly. To date, the commission has not taken any formal action to enforce violations as it relates to any kind of failure to perform due diligence in these scenarios. However, I would just note to you that Louisiana Revised Statute Title 37, Section 1455, and then it's subsection A, paragraphs 11 and 12. It clearly states that it's a violation for a real estate agent to offer real estate for sale or for lease without the written consent of the owner or his authorized agents. So at the point that you're dealing with a fake seller, you don't have the authority of the owner and you don't have the authority of an authorized agent. So at the point that a transaction goes through fraudulently, the real estate commission might be the least of your concerns if you're embroiled in some high dollar litigation, depending on the value of that property that was involved. So again, just something that we've seen kind of increasing here recently, and with AI, and other technological advances, I have a feeling we're going to see more of this continue. Kind of the last in this vein of risk management, or just kind of compliance enforcement recommendations. One thing we've seen recently too is the requirement that is in our law, Title 37, Section 1469. This was passed in 2001. Says that for any lease agreements on residential property, you have to include the notice of public access to the statewide sex offender database. We're seeing lots of leases come through when we're requesting records on complaints involving leases. We're seeing lots of lease templates for some reason here over the last 6 months or so that are not including that notice. So that language is already in the mandatory agreement to buy or sell. It's I believe it's on page 9 of that mandatory form. So you can copy and paste that language and stick it in your lease agreements. But just a reminder, that is on the commission's fine citation schedule. First offense is a $150 fine. So it's just something that we continue to see here with increasing frequency. I don't know if that fell off the template somewhere along the way, or just not worth $150. Beyond that, a little bit of housekeeping. Later this year, beginning in August, the commission will start having its task group meetings with the mandatory forms subcommittee for upgrading or revising the mandatory forms, the agreement to buy or sell, the property disclosure document. We've had, request for comments open on the website for quite some time now. I think that's closed now. If you have any suggestions or comments, you can certainly email those to me. We have not started those meetings. I believe we're going to start those in August. We should have, a revised, finalized copy probably ready sometime by November, no later than December 1st. We would want to get that out to the public, and then that would become effective and required for use beginning January 1st. And then lastly, the annual license renewal that always opens right around August 1st. Before you start getting into any delinquent fees or anything like that, you have until October 1st, excuse me. One of the things that we continue to see, again, from kind of a compliance standpoint, is people that have existing education audits outstanding from the prior year, who for whatever reason, they want to wait until December 31st when everybody's at home on New Year's Eve and wait to renew. And then they realized that their renewal is blocked because they have outstanding education that's not completed or outstanding fines from those audit notices they receive. So just a reminder, this opens as early as August 1st. We send out roughly 10 reminders as it relates to license renewals each year. Once you renew, you will stop getting the annoying reminder from us. So you can renew early, hopefully, and it'll be less emails in your inbox. But again, you know, we'd prefer to see everybody within that August 1st to September 30th time period. There's no reason to incur those delinquent fees beyond getting caught in a situation of having a blocked renewal. So, you know, just to clarify kind of on how we do that, if somebody doesn't complete their education or doesn't take the mandatory course for 2024, they're included in the 2025 CE audit mail out. I think we had roughly 1,000 of those this year. So once those go out, under section 1437 of our law, it specifically says the commission shall not allow a licensee to renew without completing 12 hours of education. So until that education is done, until that fine is paid, you will be blocked. And then your license will be expired and you'll have to go through the process of fingerprinting. You'll have to go through the process of retaking exams. So just a notice for all you brokers to tell your salespeople in advance to take care of that earlier than later. But I could take any questions if there are any.
Yeah, Tom, and I want to say first before we take questions, we've got a great working relationship with Summer, Tom, and the whole team over at the Real Estate Commission. They've been extremely helpful when we need things or when they need things from us. And we're going to be working together with them on this forms committee as we go navigate through that process. Also, Tom, I know it's not particular to their practice, but give them an update on the new law that passed as it relates to the number of years commissioners used to could serve and what it's going to be in the future.
Sure. So I believe the governor's already signed it. So I do believe it's effective now. The commission brought legislation for however long the commissioners have been authorized by law to serve only 1 6-year term, never, you know, having the opportunity to serve again. So in bringing the initial proposal was to allow commissioners to serve 2 6-year terms. There was concerns among some of the legislators and, you know, stakeholders that that could be, you know, potentially too long if those terms were served back to back. So the compromise and how the final posture of the bill as it was enacted says that commissioners can serve 2 4-year terms. So you can go as many as 8 years. And for the current commissioners, you know, they are limited to being able to serve 1 additional 4-year term for where they were at. Currently, of course, all of that is subject to an actual appointment by the governor. So essentially the change is 1 6-year term to 2 4-year terms. The Real Estate Appraisers Board, I don't know if we have any appraisers on the phone right now either, but the Appraisers Board had legislation as well, which was essentially cleanup legislation to bring the education standards for appraisers into lockstep with the national standards, correct some definitions that our federal oversight you know, wanted us to match the exact language of their Code of Federal Regulations provisions, and really was, you know, just to bring the board into compliance with, you know, federal audit standards. So that was kind of the Real Estate Commission's, you know, legislative aim this session, and, you know, both of those have passed, and I think both have been signed by the governor.
All right. Any questions for Tom while we have him on? Just unmute or raise your hand. Lori, do you see any?
I don't see any in the chat or Q&A.
All right. One thing before we get to our next presenter, I want to let you know that we in the next Louisiana Realtors in the next couple of weeks will be adding to its forms library on larealtors.org. We're going to be adding a vacant land contract. It's really been asked for a lot around the state, that we've been all over the state from different areas. It's just a recommended form, nothing mandated. And then we're hopeful in the next 30 to 60 days, we're going to also put up a recommended commercial buyer representation agreement. I know that on the forms library now is the residential, the 3 versions we put out on that as it relates to the settlement guidelines and using those prior to showing or touring a home. But we're going to add to that in 30, 60 days with a recommended commercial buyer rep agreement. So y'all email us, text us if there's any other forms that you'd like to see. As I've said on previous occasions, we're going to build this library out based on the needs and wants of the members in terms of different forms they may need to use with different types of transactions.
Norman, I have that online form where they can submit a sample, where they can submit a request for a sample form. So they can do
Okay.
that all online without having to email us
Okay.
under the
Perfect.
forms library.
All right. Anything else for Tom while we have him on? Well, Tom, thank you for taking some time out and great information for all of them to take back, the brokers here to take back to their offices and share with their agents. And I look forward to working with you on the committee coming up. And thanks for all y'all do for us.
Absolutely. Thank you for working with us, and we appreciate that relationship as well. Everybody, thank you for your time. I appreciate y'all including me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have our Louisiana legislative session wrap up. Miss Natalie Cooper is going to walk us through that. Natalie is a lifelong Louisiana resident, born and raised in Baton Rouge. Her professional career began in 2000 in property and casualty insurance with a retail independent insurance agency in Baton Rouge. She later joined the Professional Insurance Agents of Louisiana, the state affiliate of the National Association of Professional Insurance Agents. For 23 years with PIA, Natalie managed the association's insurance sales to members, including errors and omissions, employment practices liability insurance, cyber liability insurance, and excess insurance, while also actively participating in governmental affairs, legislative outreach, member services, event coordination, and legal and regulatory matters. Natalie has taught E&O loss prevention and ethics seminars for independent insurance agents, and has instructed continuing education courses focused on customer service and E&O claims prevention for licensed insurance professionals through the Louisiana Department of Insurance Building Blocks program. Natalie is a licensed property and casualty insurance producer and holds the Certified Insurance Counselor and Certified Insurance Service Representative designations. Thank you, Natalie, and we would love to hear from you about our legislative session wrap-up.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Carrie. I appreciate Carrie sharing my little bit of background with you because I am new to the tribe as your new Assistant Governmental Relations Director and Political Field Representative. Joining all of you midstream during this recent legislative session, and I do have some updates for you. Just to expand upon what Rep. Firment shared with us earlier. And I do want to take a minute and just commend him and all of our legislators. They work so very hard every year, particularly hard this year. And I do encourage you, like he said, to call your legislators with any thoughts or any feedback that you have on bills as they come up. They do appreciate hearing from you. So when we prepared our report, it's available on our website for you. We've broken it out into a few different areas. We got into property insurance and fortified homes, which Firment talked a lot about those. We got into some real estate bills that we were tracking. We got into auto and tort reform because if you want homeowners insurers, we should have auto insurers too. And also that hands-free bill that I know some of you are probably interested in. But we did track bills related to state and local taxes, to homestead exemptions, to blighted property, to the insurance auto tort reform and property reform, contractor licensing board, and Code Council, as well as property management. So we'll just touch on some of those property insurance and fortified home bills right now. There was one bill, HB 345 by Rep. Weibel out of Franklinton. This bill was supported by LR and became Act 182. And what this bill does is it gives homeowner insureds additional notice of time when they're going to be non-renewed, or insurance policy is going to be non-renewed. The standard practice has been 30 days for residential or personal lines and 60 for commercial. But now with the passage of this bill, your clients are going to be getting any notices from their insurance companies about non-renewals 60 days in advance instead of 30 days. Let's see, another one that Rep. Firment had talked about was HB 356, and I did check. It has been sent to the governor, but no, not signed yet. And that was the one that he talked about, the Stated Value Homeowners Policy Act, that would just allow a homeowner's insurance agent to request a stated value policy on behalf of the homeowner. So they may do that now, or once the bill is signed by the governor. And in doing that, they're able to get that premium down. But like Rep. Firment said, I don't know how much of a premium savings will be there. And then in the event of a loss, you might be a little underinsured. I know the insurance agents were concerned about this one because there's a huge gap in what a stated value policy could be versus a total insured value on a policy, on a property that's mortgaged. So just be conscientious of that one, certainly. And the bill allows for a very large disclaimer in large print that would say, this is a stated value homeowners policy, etc. Another bill by Senator Kirk Talbot, Senate Bill 137, has still been sent to the governor, and we're still waiting on a signature. And this was something that was great for insurance agents that we really wanted to see. Insurers often over the years have stopped writing business in different areas or different lines of business and never had to disclose that. So you could pull up all of the companies with the Department of Insurance that are authorized to do business in Louisiana, and you would see companies listed that are authorized to do business here, but they're not actively writing. So this bill, Senate Bill 137 by Talbot, what this will do once it's signed by the governor is that insurers are going to have to notify the Department of Insurance if they're going to cease writing in an area. They want to know what lines of insurance are affected, the area of the state that's affected, and a brief explanation as to why they're suspending writings in particular areas. So that's just going to enable that transparency that we've talked about and keep us in the know so we know when somebody's doing business here, if they're really doing business here or not. And of course, Senator Talbot also came through with Senate Bill 136, which has also been sent to the governor, and it would require insurers to provide personalized rate transparency reports to consumers when they're offering to renew or write a homeowner's or an auto insurance policy. So that way we're all going to get to see exactly how our premium is calculated. So I think that's a great tool for insurance consumers and something that'll definitely help us all get a better handle and a better idea of why our premiums are so high. HB 145 by Rep. Wilder in Denham Springs brought a bill to increase the tax deduction amount allowed to no more than $10,000 for upgrading a home to the state uniform construction code standards and fortified standards. That one has been sent to the governor, and we're just waiting on a signature there too. Quickly, as we were in this discussion and I was pulling up some resources online for me, I did want to tell y'all about Louisiana fortified homes. There are 3,937 homes that have been approved for Fortify Homes Louisiana and have new roofs in our state, and they go all the way up north of Monroe. A lot of them are concentrated in South Louisiana, particularly in Southeast Louisiana. And I wanted to let you know too about Fortified Homes. And there's a website, fortifiedhome.org/incentives for residents of Louisiana. And you can also get this information off the Department of Insurance website. Their grant program for roofs is closed. They have funded out all the money that they can fund so far, but it will be opening up again. And there is a page on the department website that I'd like to make y'all aware of related to fortified homes so that you can track that and you can get possibly get your clients registered on there. Certainly it's not something, the fortified home programs is not necessarily for someone that needs a roof in the immediate, but if it could be coming down the line, that's definitely something worth considering. I wanted to let y'all know too that after the 2024 legislative session, insurance companies writing homeowners insurance were required to offer a fortified roof endorsement on their policies. Now, you may not have an insured that has a fortified roof or a client that has a fortified roof on their home, but they can go back to their agent and they can ask for a fortified roof endorsement on their policy. Now, it may be a little extra premium, but it might also improve you a little bit where the premium is not a whole lot more. But it could actually, adding the endorsement could actually bring your overall rate down. But basically what this endorsement would do is in the event of a loss, your homeowner with this endorsement would be able to obtain extra funds to help offset the cost of upgrading the roof to a fortified roof. So even if they don't have one now, this could be a way to help get one by this endorsement on a policy. Just talk to your insurance agent about it. Let's see. So then let's talk about HB 121 by Rep. Adams out of Jackson. It provides prohibitions relative to adjusters and contractors. This is basically now Act 144. And what it is clarifying is that a public adjuster cannot also be the contractor. They have to pick a hat. So that one is, it should help with transparency, just keeping things clean, who's doing what, all very clear. So we should see some good action with that bill. HB 122 is Act 62 now, and that's by Reps Baralt and Chason. And this creates the Louisiana Fortified Roof Registry. And we're excited, insurance is excited about this because it's often hard to write a policy when you don't know the date or the year the roof was put on. So insurance industry has been asking for a roof registry for a long time, and we're very excited now that it's coming. So we have that going for us, tracking those bills and those roofs, and we'll be better able to insure them. HB 145 by Rep. Wilder of Denham Springs. Again, I think I might have mentioned this one. Increases the tax deduction amount allowed to no more than $10,000 for upgrading a home to state uniform construction code and standard fortified housing. And I believe that had previously been $5,000. So that's up now. HB 329, did we talk about that one? By Rep. Troy Hebert. This one was a department bill, an insurance department bill, and Rep. Hebert ran with it, and it's to provide funding for the Louisiana Fortified Homes Program. Basically, the first $5 million that the Department of Insurance collects on surplus line premium tax will go to fund the program. If you know that any business that's written on surplus line paper in Louisiana, there's a tax of 4.85%. That is a standardized tax rate across the country for the NAIC, the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. So the first $5 million of those funds will go into the Louisiana Fortified Homes Program. And then also the Department of Insurance is increasing some of their fees. Maybe it's a license fee or a company line of business fee, but those fees are all increased by $15. And as a licensed agent, I'm very happy to pay an extra $15 to fund roofs for Louisianians. So we're all very excited about that one. HB 345 by Rep. Weibel of Franklinton is going to amend that policyholder bills of right. I mentioned that one from 30 days to 60 days. And also give some time, additional time to a surviving spouse on that property. As far as real estate, HB 139 was going to be pretty ugly, but Norman took care of that one pretty quickly. That bill would have conflicted with parts of the settlement terms with NAR as it relates to the greater function of NAR. It also had some ambiguous advertising language in there, and it would have created a problem for contractual freedom. So HB 139 was brought up in committee, and it did not come up again. So we're glad that that one has kind of gone the way it's gone. Another one that could have been problematic was related to blighted properties. And this was HB 512 by Rep. Tammy Phelps out of Shreveport. And it would have created a criminal penalty for real estate agents and property managers if the property owner did not comply or correct blighted property circumstances. So the good news is right before the bill failed to pass the House of Representatives right before adjournment. So it is dead in the water, so you don't have to worry about that criminal penalty. If that comes up in the future, we're going to be sure and go to the table for that one again. Another criminal kind of bill that we saw was HB 6 by Rep. Jackson from Shreveport. And it sought to criminalize owners of rental properties that receive payments in full from tenants for utility services. So if the owner of the property, the manager of the property failed to remit the funds for those utility services. So there's no consequence for the property manager if your tenant has not paid, but if your tenant has paid you, and it's your obligation to remit those utility payments, there could be some consequences if that's not done. But basically, you're given some grace in it because we're going to anticipate that it could have been a mistake, that those funds weren't remitted. But we do need to stay on top of those blighted properties for sure, and getting those bills paid from our property tenants. Delisha Boyd brought House Bill 288, which is now Act 263, and it brings the Louisiana Real Estate Appraisal Board in line with the new national standards required for the appraisal industry. So we were happy to see that one pass. HB 300 by Rep. Mack out of Livingston is now Act 220. It is a constitutional amendment, so it's a vote that you're going to see on the ballot in November. And the proposition on the November 3rd ballot will read, do you support an amendment to increase the maximum amount of income a person may receive and still qualify for the special assessment level for residential property receiving the homestead exemption? So watch for that proposition on the November 3rd ballot, and if it is successful, it'll be effective January. We also got into, the sales tax issues with Rep. Julie Emerson. That was HB 578. And initially, we were able to exempt the MLS from this tax bill. However, when the bill changed hands from the House side to the Senate side, the parties on the House side and the parties on the Senate side were in disagreement. So they got together to work it all out and basically pulled every amendment that was put on it on the House side, including the MLS exemption. So the MLS exemption was back in. It has been sent to the governor. He has not signed it yet. But the exemption is there, and we expect it'll go. And the tax on that amount is going to be the tax as it applies at your local association. So we'll keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, just to jump in on that one, because I know we've had a lot of conversations on this. And Rhonda can jump in. We did everything possibly using every means we had to get the exemption from, meaning the MLS not having to pay the tax. The Department of Revenue got involved at the last minute and used their stroke with the administration. That's what we believe. So in essence, the MLS is gonna have to pay the tax or but here's the good news. We were able to get an amendment on it. It says no matter where the member lives that is billed by your MLS, because locally we know you have members in various parishes and the local sales tax varies from local parish to local parish. The tax will be billed to the member based on that local tax where the local association is actually domiciled. So there'll only be one amount for every local association because it's going to be based on where that local association, what parish it's in. We're going to continue next year at the session to try to get that exemption out of there totally, where there will be no tax in the future. But just know that there was an amendment to help the locals in terms of accounting and billing that. But if Rhonda, you want to jump in, I know you had helped a lot on that as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, when a bill gets sent to conference, it's very difficult to lobby the conference committee. We had the Speaker Pro Temp working on our side. Troy Abear was working with Emerson. Of course, our regular lobbyists were. But at least we got Plan B, which was to make it easier on our association executives and their accounting staff when they do the actual billing, to limit it to the location of that office. I don't think the locals are going to be happy with that, because that means the locals in the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many parishes your association is located in is going to be missing out on those tax dollars. But I think the early conversations we had with the Uniform Local Board on sales tax and revenue helped us to at least have that fallback plan. And I mean, that's really the best we could do this session. We argued that it was $300,000 or less, and apparently the state needed our money. So that's where we sit right now.
And also, I want y'all to reach out to Natalie here if you need her for a sales meeting or an update on any of these legislative issues. She's going to be traveling around not only to the brokerage firms, but also to our local associations to provide them political, PAC, and other support locally throughout the state.
Okay. And we've made some good contacts already with that exemption being removed, the MLS exemption being removed. We've already made some good contacts and are already talking with legislators for next year. Just a few more bills that I want to touch on. House Bill 148 by Jeff Wiley of Gonzales was a really contentious bill this session. It started out innocently enough. All the bill was going to do was going to disclose the expiring policy premium on the renewal policy premium when the policy was issued to a homeowner, for example. But the language was amended with bill language from Robbie Carter's HB 576, which was a bill that the governor had testified to on the second day of the session. So that language was put into HB 148, which gives the commissioner more power to determine if a rate is excessive. The commissioner consistently testified against this bill, stating he has all of the authority that he needs. But this bill did pass. Thankfully, Senator Kirk Talbot, who's the Senate Insurance Committee chair, did amend the bill to put some actuarial guardrails in there, because we don't want to see an insolvent carrier when we have a storm and we've been paying affordable rates. So I trust in our Commissioner of Insurance. He's done a good job for us citizens, and I expect that he will continue to do so. Senate Bill 231 by Senator Reese of Leesville. This is an interesting bill as it relates to medical expenses paid by insurance. And I know this seems like it doesn't really relate to homeowners, but if we want homeowners insurance carriers, we are going to want to get insurers that write multiple lines, not just homeowners, not just auto, but that write multiple lines where they can offset their own risk. And we've got the viability of some stronger markets that have that flexibility in spreading their risk by area or by line of business, whatever it would be. So basically, until this bill goes into effect, which has been sent to the governor, but he hasn't signed it yet. Up to this point, if there was a case of an auto accident and somebody was injured, the only medical bill that could be disclosed was the amount billed by the hospital. It did not allow them to disclose the amount paid, the amount actually paid, which could have been less than that amount. It did not allow disclosure of usual and customary cost of treatment. So the jury had been only getting one very large number. With the passage of this bill, Senate Bill 231, now juries will get to see all the numbers. They get to see the amount billed, they get to see that revised amount billed or any amount paid, and also get to hear about the cost of customary treatment for such an injury. So that is the hope, is that's going to decrease the amounts paid out on these big claims, and thereby enable our insurance companies to do what they need to do and be here and do business. That's one of the bills that they've looked for a long time, insurance companies. And then the last one I want to talk to y'all about real quick is HB 519 by Rep. Brian Glorioso. This is a hands-free bill, and it prohibits the use of a wireless telecommunication device when you're operating a motor vehicle. Now, LR has opposed this bill for a number of years. I think I first saw it in 2006. And it just failed and failed and failed and failed and failed year after year. But this year it finally happened. It defines autonomous vehicle, hands-free wireless telephone as though it's plugged in through your car, lawfully stationary, which you could be at a red light, in park, or in neutral, or in gear, and that is lawfully stationary. It defines motor vehicle. It defines wireless telecommunication device. Basically, you're going to get a warning. Right now, if you have your phone in your hand and it's a secondary offense, they can't just pull you over for having your phone in your hand. There usually has to be a primary, like maybe you don't have your seatbelt on, or maybe you were speeding, and then this could be a secondary offense, unless it happens, I believe, in a construction zone or a school zone, which those are the standards right now that we're working by. And basically those guidelines are kind of extending out into the rest of the world, with the consequences for driving with your phone in your hand in a school zone or in a construction zone have elevated a little bit. But it is a secondary offense. It won't be effective until January 1. And maybe I'll work something up to provide a little bit more detail onto what you can expect, what you can and can't do when you're driving with your phone.
Now too, Natalie, I think, and correct me, I think this bill, if you have a automobile that it's automatically built into the car, where you don't have to have the phone in your hand and you're
That's
talking.
right.
It does not apply to, and we think in 5 to 10 years that most cars will have that technology.
Right.
And we certainly believe this may lower some auto insurance rates as well. It was
Right.
going to pass. It's been around forever, and it's hard to fight insurance reform and then fight this bill too. But I want to caveat it that if your car has a system built in for the phone, and you have to be pulled over for speeding or another primary offense before they can ticket you, as Natalie said, on this bill as well.
But even if your phone is plugged in and you don't have that capability through your car, and it's plugged in and you've got it on a stand, and you push a button to make a call, just like you would push a button on a radio station, that's okay. It's not in your hand. And I think that concludes my report. If y'all would like to see it, it is available on our website. If you'd like me to come to you, I'll be glad to do that. Thank you very much for the opportunity to serve you. Please reach out to me.
All right. Thank you, Natalie. And last but not least, we're going to put up on the screen, I implore everyone to go back to your areas. All of you, your brokers, all of you, we want you to come to Broker Summit at the end of August. I can tell you it's going to be the best day and a half you spent learning, first of all, about how to manage and recruit, maintain, and develop multi-generational talent that you have in your office for your business. We're going to bring in Sherry Chris from the National Realtors that's going to talk about what NAR is doing for brokers at the national level in light of the lawsuit and things that have gone down there. we're going to have Lawrence Yoon, the chief economist of NAR, conduct a massive and up-to-date economic update on where all things real estate is at that time. We also have the senior lobbyist of the National Realtors going to come in and talk about all the great things that they're working on in the big, as they call it, quote, beautiful bill, things in it that relate to real estate that are positive, and anything else that's happening in real estate as it relates to congressional actions. We're going to have a networking event that night at the Houston Astros game that's second to none. You'll have the greatest area to be able to sit, visit, talk with brokers in other areas of the state. And then the last morning, half a morning, we're going to have Terry Watson again come in and talk about how to retain agents, lead better agents, and create a culture that no one wants to leave your office. So, and I get a call, we're doing it in Houston. Obviously, we do most of our meetings in the state of Louisiana, but we got a great rate on the hotel. It's a phenomenal facility, and we're able to build in a great networking event with the Houston Astros game. The timing of year played into that because in Louisiana, we didn't have a good sporting event or something to have, and we could do that works out better. I will tell you, there's some on this call. Rhonda started this a couple of years ago. David Favre was there. You've seen it on social media, Facebook. The testimonials are out there that we've shared. With the education, networking, and the knowledge you're going to be able to ascertain, we believe this will be a premier event that in your future, whether we do it in Houston or Louisiana or wherever, that you'll want to attend, because I think when you come back, you're going to be better versed as a broker owner, a broker manager, or if you hold a broker's license that wants to do something in the future on top of what you're doing now. We think it's a paramount event for you to attend. So that's going to be, as you see on the screen, August 27th, 28th. Please sign up. It's on our website, first page, LARealtors.org. And also you can use the QR codes to sign up. Any questions on the Broker Summit as it relates to programming, networking, et cetera? But please sign up. It's a great event, and please inform your other brokers within your market areas that this is something they definitely want to attend. Rhonda or David, y'all want to speak up? I know y'all, and there may be some others on the call that were at the last one that want to talk about how great it was in terms of the format, programming, and knowledge-based information that they were able to receive.
Well, of course, I'm biased because I got this started. Y'all, the educational offerings that we've had these first 2 years, and then again with Terry, has really been great. We've been able to bring in national trainers with relevant topics. They do a great job. They're excited to be with us. Matthew Rathman still talks about, coming to Houston and being confused. He was going to Houston to teach for Louisiana, but he enjoyed being with our brokers. He's shared that within the state of Virginia. They really don't do anything like this. The facility at the Astros baseball game is amazing. You don't have to leave the area we're in. They literally come and wait on you. But just being with other brokers and being away from your office and not, having the ability for an agent to just come drop in while you're maybe in the middle of a class online lets you focus on what you need to learn and how you can better help your agents. And then getting to know other brokers across the state that you can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I've got an issue. How are you handling this? Is always helpful. And we should know that from just being agents.
Is there great job? Is there anybody else that went to the last one that would like to comment? I don't know. I'm looking at the list. So, but no, we encourage you. We did last year's in New Orleans. So as Rhonda put down in the conjunction with the fall meetings, and we're going to continue to try to get a good balance, a fair balance of finding good hotels, finding great places. And certainly Louisiana is at the top of the list, and we do quite many of our meetings in Louisiana as we speak. But we're trying to kind of mix it up a little bit and give y'all some new, new locations and new places. But I encourage you to, like I said, great event. Please go back, and we'd love to see all of you on this call and others that aren't on this call to sign up for this premier broker summit event that Louisiana Realtors offers every year to its brokerage community.
And the real thing is we try to, you know, keep it affordable. Yeah, it's a little bit of a travel to get over to Houston, but I think we figured out, we had 3 of us, Baton Rouge, Alexandria, and Shreveport, and it all takes us 4 hours to get there. So it is drivable if you want to drive. If you're in the New Orleans area, there's inexpensive flights out of New Orleans. I know we had several that flew in the morning of the event and then flew out as soon as everything was over. The hotel, the Omni, is just fabulous. The food was amazing. We try to put as much inclusive as we can. Our original plan for the first one was to do brokers at the beach, but that just is not affordable in the summer to try to go and hold a conference at a hotel. It was just way
And
too
tax-wise, you
expensive.
may be able to write it off, a little bit of it as well, since it's out of the state. So, you know, check, I'm not a CPA, but I check with your CPA on that as well. All right. Any other question from the broker summit or anything else we talked about today? Anybody else, any question? All right. Well, thank y'all for everything you do. Continue to do the great work you do, and let us know if we can be assistants here at Louisiana Realtors, and we're always here for you. Bring us some new ideas. Let us know when we need to change things, and we wish you a great rest of your week. Carrie, you want to say anything?
Just thank y'all for getting on and let people know that this is recorded and the video will be available online at louisianarealtors.org. So just let everybody know that it's out there if they missed it today. Okay.
Thank you. Have a good day.